Welcome to our video on how to make bannock. I'm here today with Debbie Younger, who is also my fantastic mom, and she is going to spend some time this afternoon teaching us how to make bannock. Before we get started, Mom, why don't you tell us a little bit about where the Métis in our family comes from?
Oh, the Métis in our family comes through my Granny LaPlante, who was born at Fish Creek, Batoche.
Where did you learn to make bannock?
Well, I learned to make bannock when I was about 12 years old, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing because I was told it was biscuits. But when I got older, a friend of mine, very good friend, Millie Long John Stefanowski, taught me how to make bannock as her mom had taught her. And that's when I realized that I actually knew how to do it.
And you've been making it ever since?
Been making it ever since.
That's great. Let's get started.
All right.
Okay, let's get baking. What are we going to need?
Well, you're going to need only 5 basic ingredients. You're going to need flour. You're going to need milk or water, your choice. You're going to need oil, and I use Crisco oil. It's my preference. You're going to need baking powder, and there again, magic is my preference for that. But you can use anything you'd like. And you're going to need salt. Then, I guess you need to know you're going to need a 2-cup measure for your milk. You're going to need a 1 cup for your flour and a 1/2 cup for your oil. You are going to also need a tablespoon for baking powder and a teaspoon for salt. I don't use 1 for salt because I can pour into my hand and I know how much a teaspoon is, and you'll learn to do that too. My trusty wooden spoon that's also way older than beige, and I'll explain to you what you're going to need this fork for when we get a little farther along. And that's about all you're going to need, so we'll be able to get started. Well, now we're ready to actually make our bannock. This is the bowl that I now use for making my bannock. My original bannock bowl was over 50 years old, and this winter it developed some cracks and wasn't safe to use anymore. And so I chose this one because it was made by a friend of mine over 40 years ago, and I thought it would be a good choice. I also like to use plastic bowl. I watched a video of an elder in BC making bannock in a school, and she said she was so happy that there was now plastic bowls big enough to use for bannock because they're so much easier to clean. And that is true. They are the easiest to clean, and any bowl will work. Stainless steel, plastic, whatever you have. All right, we are now ready to start. First ingredient that goes in is the flour. And that's going to be about 5 cups of flour. I'm pretty careful when I'm measuring it when I'm doing it this way because I really don't have time on a video to do it the way I normally do. This is easier also if you've never made to do it. All right, that's 4. And 1 more. There we go. Close enough. All right. Put the lid on that and put it away. Okay. Now we need some baking powder. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And the salt. There we go. All right. Now, we'll take our trusty wooden spoon I'm just going to mix this up a little bit so the baking powder and the salt are distributed through. Okay, there we go. Now we are going to run this spoon around and we're going to make a well in the middle of our bowl. There we are.
Mom, how come you make a well?
Oh, to put the wet ingredients, because then you can slowly mix them in, and because if you don't do this, you may get lumps, and this helps prevent lumping to happen. You'll see when I put it in how I do it, and it'll make it much easier to understand. Okay, now we are going to add the rest of our ingredients. So we have to go over, I always take the chill off of the milk or use warm water because your bannock will rise much nicer than it does with cold water. Okay, now we're just going to pour this into the center. Okay, and then you just slowly start to just stir it. Okay, now I'm going to stir just a little bit quicker because I'm going to start adding my oil. And I like to do it this way because that way again it mixes in really nicely and doesn't leave any lumps behind. All right, there we go. Takes a few minutes for it to bind up nicely so you can then finish working it with your hands. All right. It's at that point where now I need to use my hands. Oh, one thing I never told you was I don't wash my wooden spoon in soapy water. I wash it just with, I started out with cold water to get the dough off, and then I just rinse it good with hot water because sometimes soap, the smell doesn't come out of the wood as they get older especially. So just a little something that might help you when you're doing it. Okay, I am going to need to add just a little more flour to this. So, to reach for my flour. Oh, can you get it?
I got it.
All right.
I make a great cooking assistant from behind the camera.
You do. You are so great. There we go.
Why are you adding a little bit more flour, Mom?
Sometimes when you're using like a liquid like that, it like milk, it doesn't react quite the same way as just plain water does. So sometimes you just have to add a little bit more flour just to make sure that it is going to be workable.
So how will our viewers know if they need to add a little bit more flour to their dough?
It'll be stuck really bad to your hands and it'll be wet. It'll feel wet. Whereas when you've got enough flour worked in, your hand should come away from it like that. See, nothing on my knuckles. And so that's what we're going to do. Just about got it over here. And then you shouldn't really overwork your dough, but I like to make sure that mine has incorporated all the flour. Oh, what a big word that was, Beige. All right.
So now that you have your dough almost ready, what are the different ways that you can cook the bannock?
Oh, today we're going to bake, but you can also fry it. Fried bannock is really good. And if you really, if you're camping or have a backyard fireplace, you can make bannock on a stick. which is kind of fun if you have grandkids. All right. All right, we're ready now to bake our bannock, basically. This is one of my bannock pans. They're probably 20 years old for sure. I don't use grease myself on my bannock pans, but you can oil it or use lard. Margarine's not so good, but you can oil it. But I prefer to use parchment paper. Parchment paper used to be really expensive, but now you can buy it at a dollar store. I bought some of this that I have right now at Dollarama, and when you cut it in little squares like this, it lasts for quite a long time. All right, so that's going in the center on this one. Now we are ready. Okay. Now I'm going to start out just pushing this like this. Okay, I use a rolling pin now because I just find it easier because I'm old. So that's what I like to do with it. There we go.
So you don't want your bannock to touch the sides of your pan?
No. I like them to get kind of crispy on the edges. You know how you like it. That's why it gets like that, is because I keep it away from the edges.
About how thick should your bannock be?
Depends on how far you want it to go. And the thicker you leave it, the longer it takes to cook, of course. I normally make mine fairly thin because we like to toast it. So I usually pat it out to a relatively big. When I make bannock, you can't call it a wheel because it's basically an oval by the time I'm done. There we go, that should do it.
If you don't have a rolling pin, can you just use your hands?
Oh, of course. And I used to, but as I got older, it just became just easier to have a little help making it nice and smooth. All right, now this is where the fork comes in. Okay, you're going to go through your bannock. You're going to go all the way through.
Why do you put fork holes in the bannock?
Fork holes allow the hot air in the oven to get through all the way through the bannock, and so it cooks much nicer, and because bannock is quite dense, it ensures that it's going to be cooked all the way through. All right, now done with that, we've preheated the oven to 410 degrees, and now we're going to put this bannock in, and it will cook or bake rather, for anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. It just depends. All right, here we go. Go. Timer, we'll set it for 8. All right, the timer just went on the oven, so we're just going to check it. Ooh, it's puffing up nice. Not quite done.
How do we know when it's done?
It's still really white on top, and if you touch it, it's a little soft, and it should feel like there's a bit of a crust there. All right, so we're going to have to wait a few more minutes. All right. All right, timer went, Time to check it. And it's looking quite nice. Oh yeah, sliding good on the pan. And when I push on it, there's a little bit of give, but it's got a nice crust to it. So I believe that means it's done. All right, over here we go. I'm gonna slide it out on the cooling rack.
What if you don't have a cooling rack at home?
Oh, if you don't have a cooling rack, tea towel works just fine to set it on.
Mom, once it's on the cooling rack or tea towel, how long until we can cut and eat it?
I like to wait about 10 minutes before I first cut mine. So it's still nice and warm, but not so hot that it'll burn your mouth.
Nothing better than warm bannock with butter and jam.
That's true. Or maybe a little cane syrup, Roger's Golden.